it's Natasha. In this video, we are going to be answering 80% of the most common questions we get asked about retaining walls. The simple definition of a retaining wall is that it is a structure that holds or retains soil behind it. Retaining walls are designed to restrain soil to a slope that it would not naturally keep to, typically a steep, almost vertical or vertical slope. Their purpose is to provide more flat, usable land versus having a slope or hillside. There are many different options for a retaining wall, the older being a natural boulder retaining wall, and newer options being Allen block. While retaining walls serve a main purpose, retaining soil to create more flat, usable land, the very best walls look really good while doing it. The height and style of most walls lend themselves very well to being a focal point in your landscaping, if they are built well and designed to be aesthetically pleasing to the eye. The cost of a retaining wall is very dependent on the materials used to retain the soil, as well as the site address and the site access. Wooden retaining walls are slightly cheaper than Allen block, but not so much cheaper that it's usually worth doing when compared to how much longer Allen block will last. For an Allen block retaining wall, a small wall 25 feet by 3 is around $10,000. An average size wall 70 feet long and 3.5 feet high is just under $25,000. And a large two-tiered wall 85 feet long, 3.5 feet high is about $50,000. Now, while these prices are usually pretty accurate, there are some factors that could make the cost go down and some factors that could significantly make the price go higher. Let's talk about the biggest factors that influence the price, like excavation and soil disposal. The fact is, most older retaining walls are in a state of failure. On the minor side of failure, you have uneven gaps or spaces between the blocks, or they are unleveled and no longer straight and true. In the most extreme cases, you have bowed walls that were once angled back and are now straight up and down. Or even quite frequently, you have walls that have shifted and have separated enough to put your finger in between blocks. This is all a result of not excavating enough soil beneath and behind the wall. A common way to lower the cost of a retaining wall project is to limit the amount of soil excavated, hauled, and disposed of. This will 100% cause problems down the road. The second biggest influencer in project price is the amount of gravel used under and behind the wall. Gravel should be 6 inches thick, plus 1 additional inch for every 1 foot of wall height. This means that a 4-foot wall should have 10 inches minimum of gravel underneath it, and behind the wall, you need a minimum of 16 inches to a common maximum of 24 inches. This is all too commonly cheated due to the cost and lack of knowledge with how important this is. Excavating and disposal of the soil and using enough gravel to provide a suitable foundation are the biggest facts that affect the price. But a few other factors that can affect your project are using plywood for temporary roads to protect surfaces or lawns, replacing nearby landscaping after construction, site with access for excavators, skid steer, or track dumpers, and site working area for stockpiling materials and tools. There are lots of factors that have gone into providing you a ballpark price for how much a retaining wall costs. I hope that I have helped shed some light on how much your project might cost. The simple answer to how high you can build a retaining wall is less than 4 feet without a permit or engineering, and almost as high as needed with professional engineering and a city permit. There are some caveats though. So let's take a little more detailed look to understand how high you can build a retaining wall. We need to understand three main factors: city building requirements, the type of soil on site, and the retaining wall block manufacturer building specifications. Most cities in the Fraser Valley allow walls under 3.9 feet to be built without a permit or engineering. Anything over 3.9 feet requires a building permit and engineering. Some cities also have a bylaw stating that you can't build a large wall if it doesn't fit with the neighborhood. The second factor is the on-site soil type. Soils that are clay retain water and are very heavy. This may mean that structural precautions and overbuilding may be a really good idea, even on a smaller wall under 4 feet in height. You may want to build a wall to an engineered standard, even if it is not required. The third factor is closely related to the site soils. Manufacturers like Allen Block have a chart that says the wall height for common applications. These wall heights can be as low as 13 inches tall when they start to require additional structural components. To summarize, there are a lot of influences and factors that set the maximum wall height. Some can be simple and built to a height of 4 feet, while others will need more structural support for walls that are only 13 inches tall. For every retaining wall, you should at least consider what forces will be applied to this wall, as it will need to stand up to them for a lifetime. The most common retaining wall material options are wood, natural boulder or rock, and concrete. This includes poured concrete and concrete blocks, both large and handheld. Each different retaining wall material has some pros and cons that we will cover here in a little detail. Wooden retaining walls can be a lower initial cost and more DIY friendly. They will last several years if made out of regular lumber, and upwards of 10 years if built with pressure-treated wood. They can last even longer if made out of pressure-treated wood rated for ground contact. While they have a lower initial cost, they will have to be replaced at some point. They have the shortest lifespan and lowest resale value. They also unfortunately have the fewest color and design options, as paint and stain do not adhere well, and curves are a lot more difficult to accomplish. Natural boulder walls can be very strong and look great if they are built by a good boulder wall builder who has access to good stones. Without square and similarly sized boulders, even the best wall builder will struggle to produce a high-end looking wall. Site access is a huge factor if you can even build a boulder wall. Boulder needs to be set in place with medium to large size excavators or skid steers. This requires at least 5 to 7 feet of room for the smaller machines. In a residential backyard, a boulder wall may not even be an option just due to limited space. Concrete retaining walls come in many configurations, but all of them typically have the highest cost but will last almost indefinitely. Poured concrete retaining walls can be a great option if you like the look of them or have limited access to an area. Using a concrete pump, large amounts of concrete can be pumped over top of a house to a limited access backyard. They can be poured in a single day and alleviate having to set hundreds of blocks manually. They can be decorative, however, most are pretty flat on the surface. This is a little boring when compared to some other options. A large concrete block is also a really good option if you're looking for a strong, durable retaining wall. They are typically used on commercial projects where the function is more desired than the aesthetics. The downside to these blocks is you need a bigger machine to set them in place. They weigh over 4,000 pounds and are not DIY friendly. The most popular option by far is a version of a handheld concrete block, the most recognized name being Allen Block. But there are other brands such as Valley Stone offering this relatively lightweight, long-lasting retaining wall option. We prefer Allen Block because of their colors and design and the fact that they will last a lifetime. The Allen Block Company has an extensive contractor training program to ensure if you want to build them correctly, you can, and they are always available for consultation and help if needed. Allen blocks are easily curved and cut to make almost any size of retaining wall design. The type of retaining wall material you choose is an important decision that either you or your contractor should make to ensure that you get the lifespan and focal point that your space deserves. From time to time, we are asked, can I build my own retaining wall? In the past, we have said maybe, but as of today, we are now saying no, you probably can't. To be upfront, we are a landscaping company that builds retaining walls. So while it may sound like we are being biased in this case, we honestly believe that we can back this up. The simple reason we have changed our answer to this question is the expectations that a DIY retaining wall will come out as straight, level, and strong as a professionally built retaining wall just does not seem to happen. If you are a construction type person and you excavate enough soil and use enough gravel, then you very well could. This is especially true if you read the technical installation manual first. First, you will bury your row of block and backfill and core fill your wall with good, clean, draining gravel. The reason why the vast majority of people should not build their own wall is the access to earth-moving equipment, dump trucks, compactors, and the sheer labor involved. To put this into perspective, a small wall that is 4 feet high and 30 feet long will require 86 wheelbarrows of soil to be dug, wheeled to the road, and loaded into 24 pickup trucks. Almost the same amount of gravel will need to be brought in, as well as about 10,000 pounds of blocks. The base course is very tedious to place, as each block needs to be perfectly level, side to side, front to back, and perfectly placed along a string line. When the placement of every block affects the look and structure of a wall, attention to detail is a must. While the answer to the question, can I build my own retaining wall, is very subjective, the reality is most cannot, nor should they. If you are the smaller minority, you can, but I strongly urge you to learn everything about how to build a retaining wall first, so that your efforts are well rewarded. In most applications, I really like the use of Allen Block for a strong, long-lasting retaining wall. But before we get into that, let's quickly address when it may not be the right fit. If you have a country feel to your property with a lot of natural landscaping elements, a natural boulder retaining wall may be more appropriate. It would be just as strong and last just as long, if not longer. But most importantly, it might fit in better. Now the caveat is that you also need a good amount of working room for a large enough machine to be able to set the large boulders. But that's a different topic for another day. The other scenario I can think of when an Allen Block wall might not be the best option is if you have a lot of wood in your landscaping and you want to keep it all the same or at least similar. While wood will not last as long, it can look very natural and unassuming in the right landscape. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get back to why Allen Block is my go-to choice for using as a retaining wall material option. Number one is you know what you're going to get with Allen Block in terms of color, size, layout, and patterns. You can see them in a magazine or a book and picture what it's going to look like in your yard. The material in every city will be the same because it's very consistent. Unlike a natural boulder wall, which can come in random colors, sizes, and shapes, Alum Block is very uniform and consistent. Number 2, the blocks can be big and heavy. I hate to say it, but this is a huge plus. A strong retaining wall needs to be heavy to hold back hundreds of thousands of pounds of soil. Unlike small DIY blocks, the big alum blocks weigh 75 pounds each, and they really lock together to retain the soil. They are core-filled with gravel and do not move when they are properly installed. While my back screams out in pain during the install, I wouldn't trade the jumbo blocks for the little ones any day. Number 3, Alum Block has world-class training and support. If a contractor truly wants to learn how to install a textbook retaining wall, Alum Block will step up and lead that training. They have 3 skill levels of training for every category they sell, and back that up with not only written documentation, but field support for any project you want help on. Number 4, Alum Blocks come in many colors, sizes, and patterns for even the most serious designers. The best part is that most of these patterns work with the jumbo blocks. This means your first course foundation can be the big ones, and the visible higher rows can be a very decorative, creative pattern that turns your retaining wall from a standard one into a magazine-worthy focal point, suitable for backdropping any backyard. Number 5, even though alum blocks are really heavy, they can be handled by hand. This means that in tight access areas or small backyards without machine access, that they can be used. Big natural boulder walls need to be set by machines, so they are limited in the versatility. Alum blocks are the most versatile retaining wall material out of all of your options. So like I said in the beginning, alum block may not be the best choice in every project, but it certainly is the most versatile block, and that makes it my go-to, most commonly used retaining wall product option. Every retaining wall needs drainage. The slightly more complicated answer, though, is what kind? Most wooden retaining walls are not built with drainage, but they should be. For a wooden wall, you want to limit the amount of water behind the wall for 2 reasons. The first reason would be to slow down the rate at which the wood will rot. Constant moisture is not good for wood long term. The second reason is water is heavy, and reducing the weight of the soil pushing on the wall will help to make your wall last longer and stay straight while doing so. The worst place for wet, heavy soil is at the top of the wall, as this is where it has the most leverage to overturn the wall. For a concrete retaining wall, specifically alum block, water affects it differently. Unlike wood, concrete is almost impervious to moisture. For all intensive purposes, water will not affect concrete. So why is water so bad for it? Well, for the same reason as the wood, water is heavy and will put a huge unnecessary surcharge on the wall. But unlike wood, this concrete retaining wall will have to resist this pressure for 50 to 100 years, maybe even longer. The added lifespan of the concrete means you also have to take into account the wear and tear of Mother Nature year after year. Water, if not drained away, will always create problems during freezing temperatures. As the water freezes, it expands and will cause the wall to move or shift. This may not structurally affect the wall, but it won't look straight anymore. This reduces the aesthetic look of your focal point. Water present around a concrete retaining wall will also encourage root growth from nearby trees or shrubs, all of which can upheave or cause a wall to bow outwards. These types of aesthetic blemishes may not be a big problem for a wood retaining wall if it's being replaced frequently. For an alum block retaining wall that will last a lifetime, an early blemish should be avoided. Fortunately, the Alum Block Contractor Training Program teaches us contractors how to avoid these problems and how to build strong, structurally sound retaining walls. A few common retaining wall questions we get asked are: how far apart should retaining walls be if they are terraced? Terrace retaining walls are a series of smaller walls that are often used when you don't want the look of a larger single wall. So for instance, instead of a single 8-foot-high wall that would look quite daunting, 2 4-foot-high walls are built with a space in between to help soften the look. They are also most commonly used to avoid needing a permit or engineer, as most cities allow retaining wall under 4 feet to be built without any oversight. This space in between should be a minimum of double the lower wall height. In this example, because the lower wall is 4 foot high, the space in between these two walls would be 8 feet. If the wall is designed by an engineer, there may be additional support installed to lessen this distance. But without an engineer, it's best to stay at least double the wall height away from the lower wall. Another question we get asked is, should I use filter fabric vertically behind my wall? Filter fabric behind a wall is not recommended by Allen Block in most cases. The exception would be in a waterfront application where you would use the fabric to control erosion from the waves. Filter fabric behind a normal wall in your yard is not recommended, as it doesn't provide any additional benefits, and in some cases can trap water, which will create a weight surcharge behind your wall. Another question is, should I use filter fabric horizontally on top of my wall? Yes, you should use filter fabric at the second row from the top. This helps prevent soil from working its way downwards into the clean, free-draining gravel that's behind your wall. Another question is, what is the best type of gravel to use for my retaining wall? 3/4 inch clear gravel is the best gravel to use under, behind, and inside your Allen Block retaining wall. 3/4 inch clear gravel is angular in nature, an average size of 3/4, and contains no fine material. This is an excellent free draining material that will pass water through it instead of trapping it. This gravel also achieves about 90% compaction simply by dumping it on the ground. This is a very practical thing for using in areas where access is limited to hand compaction. Someone who is a good fit for a retaining wall will usually want to retain soil in a near vertical manner to gain more flat, usable space, or will want an elevation change for aesthetic focal point purposes. In both cases, their construction is very similar and will require the client to spend an appropriate amount of money to have a strong, long-lasting retaining wall built. Because retaining walls are not as enjoyable as a family vacation, they usually need to solve a specific problem to gain the priority over relaxing in the sun or wherever you enjoy going. Retaining walls offer a solution to sloped, unusable land and allow you to enjoy extra yard space. They also serve a very important role of preventing severe soil erosion. This can even be as serious as legally being required to contain your soil from eroding into the neighbor's yard if you are the higher neighbor. Now, if you're looking for an elevation change, they can be a perfect fit to secure a cozy sunken patio or a raised garden bed bursting with colorful flowers. Retaining walls are not a good fit for you if you don't have a problem you want to solve. For instance, most farmers have enough land so they can utilize a gradual slope to make the grade change. Others use large gravel rocks to prevent the erosion on a bank or hillside. While there are many reasons you may or may not be a good fit, the choice is ultimately up to you. Do you have a need or desire to retain soil in a near vertical manner? Can you benefit from having increased flat usable land? Do you want to look at a focal point that is raised above or sunken into the ground? Only you or a landscape designer can answer these questions.